I've accumulated two of these 30 volt 3 amp buck converters. And as I said in an earlier video, I'm going to try to mount two of these converters on one of these standard front panels. And as you can see, it's going to result in a lot of front panel disappearing because I'll have to cut these out and drill these out. There won't be much left of the front panel. So as I've done before, I made a template, actually two templates. One to be used as a final panel and one to be used as a working marked up template for transferring center points and the edge, filing limit. And I've thrown a couple of IEC cutouts in for the rear panel. And so I fastened it. I fastened the throwaway template, and now I'm going to center punch these holes and cut out these openings. Then I'll throw away this panel, this template, and I'll put on a new one which will represent the final finished panel. The first thing we need to do is to assemble all of the components that are to be mounted on the front panel, which in this case are 4 banana jacks, a switch, and 2 buck devices. Since I'm going to do the rear panel at the same time, I've got this IEC connector. I'm going to center punch these holes on the crosses. Then I'm going to center punch the 4 corners, but I'm going to stay back just by eye about 1/4 of an inch. Be very careful on these. And so on. I was considering using a shrouded jack, but there's just not enough room. After marking all the center holes and punching, as I said, these by eye, I drilled holes in the area to be cut out big enough to receive the end of this coping saw. In other words, I can install it through the hole. I did not drill the holes for the components because I'll tear the paper with the drill, and I'll drill them afterwards. The coping saw, you'll see me using it, cost me $10 from, it's a Craftsman on eBay. And I visited Lowe's today and they have them for I think $8.70. I picked up a package of blades. Of course you get one with the saw. 6 pieces for $2.90. And a package of 6 contains 2 coarse, 2 medium, and 2 fine blades. I think I'll start with a fine blade and see how that works. While I'm cutting these holes out, I intend to hold this plate in various orientations in a vise. Now, I want a softer and frankly cleaner set of jaws. So I've gotten these 2 pieces of wood. Now any 2 scraps will work as long as the top, and in my case, because I prefer to work right-handed, the top and the right end are lined up. They don't even have to be the same length. So I'm going to clamp these. I've got them clamped together good at the top and one end. At this point, I'll take some sticky double-sided foam tape, about as long as the jaw. Now this will have to be done to suit your vise, and it doesn't need to be a very good vise. It can be a $29 cheap bench vise from Harbor Freight, but it does have to be mounted to a secure surface, and you have to have room for the work to extend down below the bench. This is the vise I'll be using. What we need to do is peel off the sticky protective tape, put the jaws in the vise, and tighten the jaws against the sticky tape. Remove the clamps and open the jaws. This is the coping saw I'll be using. I do have to apologize for the light in this shop. Most of the machinery have task lights over the lathe, milling machine, drill presses. And this particular space, the strip lights on the ceiling, one of the fluorescent lights right in this area has a bad ballast. Loosening the handle will allow me to remove the blade. I'll insert the blade in the hole and reinstall the blade in the saw frame. And then nice easy strokes will cut down the template edge. Now this is wiggling a little bit. It's because these vise jaws are coming together at an angle. Once I get this piece removed, I'll clamp it and this in the vise, and these jaws will straighten out. Right now I can get my finger down in front of the jaws. Now when I get clear down here, I'm going to back the saw up and rotate it slightly and try to cut into that hole down there. So I've cut into the hole. I'll remove this from the vise jaws. And because I like to work vertically, I'll just rotate the front panel. I'll lay the saw in my hand. And then I'll proceed to do the short side. So at this point we can take out the center and square as much as possible the corners up. At this point I've got a nice hole in the center. My saw is still captive, and I haven't quite brought the opening down against the green template. I'm going to take the saw blade out again. Now I'm going to put this into the vise and try to get the edge of the opening right at the top of the jaws. I'm not going to file until it's flat. Now I may nick the wood, but wood's cheap. I've had this vise for 30 years, maybe 35. I've welded, I've with an acetylene torch burned. I've done just about everything you can do to abuse a vise. But I've always put false jaws on so that I don't cut, scratch, or accidentally drill a hole in the jaws. Now I'm going to use a file. Anytime you use a file, you should put a handle on it, either wooden or plastic. The plastic ones just shove on. The wooden ones, if you can find them, screw on. They sort of are self-threading onto the tang. Now when you're filing into a corner, remember that the edge of the file cuts. So it's possible for me to cut the vertical face here, but also to go down into the jaws. You may start at a vertical edge and file away from it. Now if we look, we have a nice flat, pretty square opening. And we need to just do this to the other sides and this hole. Before I go any farther, I test fit one of the units. It looks okay. It looks to me like it'll fit in the inside the case. That's always a concern of mine. I'm preparing to cut out the other opening, and you can see I took the piece of scrap plastic and put it on this side of the vise. That makes sure that the temporary jaws, which are sort of wobbly because they're mounted to foam tape, keeps the jaws parallel, and it provides a much tighter gripping surface. If you were worried about that earlier, you could stick something like a couple of quarters down here. You want to create a space on this side a little bit more than the thickness of the panel material. If you feel your file has loaded up with pieces of plastic, they make this animal. It's really a very short, bristled wire brush. You go with exactly in the same direction as the teeth in the file, and it does a pretty good job of cleaning out build-up debris. I've drilled the 5 holes. I've squared off the opening on both sides for the buck device. If this were a plumbing project, they would call this a dry fit. I plopped everything in just to make sure that the template didn't mislead me. But of course I created a template. Pretty tight fit here and here. But I can't hardly push these closer together. Now these are 3/4 inch center to center, so we can use a pre-made banana jack. But they're not 3/4 here. I just didn't have enough room. So I'll finish up this part. The next part will be, I'll start off with a wiring schematic to show you exactly what we're going to do. And then I'll mount the switching power supplies that I intend to use to power these devices. So I hope you come back for part 2 of this project. There may be a part 3, I'm not sure. This is what the finished project will look like. Thank you.